إن سألتم عن إلهي فهو رحمن رحيم أنزل الشرع حنيفا رحمة للعالمين رحمة للعالمين إن سألتم عن كتابي فهو قرآن كريم ضم دستور الحياة وحوى نور المبين وحوى نور المبين. If you ask me who my God is, on whose name I call, if you ask me who my God is, He's the God.
Thank you very much. In the name of God, the ever merciful, the ever generous. I begin by praising God and sending peace and salutations upon all of the prophets of God, from Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus and the Prophet Muhammad. May God's peace and blessings be upon all of them. Now, I'd like to first of all put you all at ease by saying I have no prepared speech, no notes in front of me, no hidden agenda here at all. I'm just here to spend the next 20 minutes of hopefully very scintillating conversation with you, where after that then we'll open up the floor for interaction and open Q&A. I believe that's really the best way to introduce one another and to introduce our religion, is merely to let things take their course, as we do in any conversation, where if you meet somebody, you let things take their course. The topic that was assigned to me is, what exactly is the purpose of life? And this is a question that every single human being thinks about in the course of his or her life. It is a question that is the most fundamental of all questions. I don't think that any question could even come close to being as important as this question is. I mean, why are we here? Why did God create us? What is the purpose of life? People have given many different responses to this question. Different religions give different responses. For some religions, the purpose of life is the destruction of the self. For others, it is to curb one's ego and one's desires. You have to basically make sure that you have no desires, and when you have destroyed your own desires, you have reached nirvana. Other religions state that the purpose of life is to serve mankind and to do good to them. And the better you are to man, the better you are in your religion. What is the response of Islam? What do Muslims say is the purpose of life? Well, the Quran has some very explicit verses in this regard. In fact, the purpose of life is unequivocal. It is so explicit, there can be no two opinions about this issue. For the Quran states, in one of these verses, the Quran states that God speaks and He says, I have not created man for any other purpose except. So God has negated every purpose that any person can possibly think of. I have not created man for any purpose except that man worships me. The purpose of creation is the worship of God. And there can be no more noble, no more dignified, no more exalted purpose for life than the worship of God. So the purpose of life for the Muslim is the worship of God. There is no ultimate reason for existence other than to adore, to venerate, to worship this God who has created us. And this shows us, or this leads us to a very interesting point about the Quran. And that is that the Quran, unlike many books of theology, does not discuss the concept of proving the existence of a God very much. There are one or two verses where God says that, He talks to those who deny Him, basically atheists. But it is not a central point of Islamic theology proving the existence of God. Rather, the primary message of the Quran is to unify this God in our worship and not to prove that He exists. It's a very profound difference if you let this point sink in. The average book of Christian theology, Jewish theology, Islamic theology that is meant for non-believers, the first chapter is, how do we know there's a God? How can we prove there is a God? Philosophers from time immemorial, from Aristotle, the prime mover, the unmoved mover, Socrates, Plato, all of these different philosophers, Dante, everyone had their own, of course some of them denied God like Nietzsche and others, but the question was there. Is there a God? If there is, how do we know He exists? Amazingly, the Quran hardly mentions this point. And the reason, the Quran itself says that the existence of God is so self-evident that to deny it really it is a type of lunacy, to be honest. To deny that a God exists, you look around you, you see the perfection, the beauty of creation. And to claim that there was nothing, and then a big bang, and voila, here we are. To claim that, you are denying something that is brighter than the sun at midday. If somebody were to come to you and say, I don't believe the sun is shining right now, how long would you debate with him and try to prove that the sun is shining? I don't think many of us would spend more than 5-10 minutes. It's like, if you're not going to believe the sun is shining, I don't know how to prove this to you. It's so self-evident and obvious. Well, for us as Muslims, the proof that the sun has a creator is clearer and brighter than the proof that the sun is shining in the day. Because God created the sun and all that is around the sun, including us. Life itself, the miracle of life. To claim that we have been created from nothing, really it boggles the mind. We don't live our lives like that. Nothing happens except that we know there's a cause behind it. If I come home and I find the furniture has been rearranged, I find my pen has been moved from point A to point B, I don't say there was a big bang and it happened. I don't say there was a chance. I know somebody was there. There was a cause that caused this effect to occur. There was something that happened that caused this change. And to presume that this entire creation, the perfection with which it exists, what we call nature, to presume this came out of naught, out of nothing, and the harmony, and the inner sync, if you like, of every single aspect of creation. No matter what science you study, be it biology, be it physics, be it chemistry, you're just amazed at the perfection of everything. And what is more amazing is that all of these sciences are actually interconnected. We, in our limited minds, can only specialize in one subfield. If I were to do my PhD in chemistry, I couldn't even specialize in chemistry. I'd have to go specialize within a sub-branch of a sub-branch of a sub-branch in chemistry. And my entire life would be dedicated to this one subfield. Hundreds of thousands of academics are all specializing in all these subfields of the natural sciences. The reality is they're all interrelated, they're all interconnected. And that is the world as we know it. And to claim that all of this is chance, everything is so perfect. From the air that we breathe, 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. If the percentage of oxygen had been increased, life as we know it could not exist. The distance from the earth to the sun. If the earth were 1% away from the sun, if the orbit of the earth were to be, to be forcibly moved 1% away, the earth would either be too cold or too hot for life as we know it to exist. The conditions that are necessary for life to exist are so perfect. God tells us to think about it over and over again. He says, look at the world around you. Do you see any flaw? Do you see any mistake? In another verse, God challenges us, look again. Look again. This is a verse in the Quran. Look again and see. Do you find a crevice, a crack, a flaw? You're not going to find anything. In another verse, God says, this is the creation I have created. Show me. What is the creation of those whom you worship besides me? What have they created that you're going to worship them? So Islam does not emphasize the proofs of the existence of God. It's too self-evident. Rather, it jumps to a far more important and a far more controversial issue. And that is unifying this one God in worship. And this leads us to another point, and that is the definition of monotheism in Islam is radically different than the definition of monotheism for all other religions. Muslims believe, and this sounds very arrogant, but this is the truth. Muslims believe that they are the only monotheistic faith on this earth. They believe there is no other religion that is truly monotheistic. You open up the dictionary definition of monotheism and you say, the belief in one supreme God. And you say, hold on a second, that's not right. You're not the only monotheistic faith. Christians believe in one God. Many other religions believe in one supreme God. How can you take this term and say you exclusively are capable of using it? The response is, well, no doubt Merriam-Webster might define, because the hands were, no doubt Merriam-Webster might define monotheism to be what it does, but the Quran defines it to be other than what Merriam-Webster does. And we take the definition of the Quran. The Quranic definition is not the belief in one supreme God. Because if this were the definition of monotheism, in reality, there is no religion that is not monotheistic on the face of this earth. The ancient Greeks believed in a multitude of God, a plethora of God. But there was one God who was the head God, the big cheese, the head honcho, Zeus himself. The ancient Romans had a plethora of gods, but there was Jupiter. Modern Hindus, and Hindus are the greatest manifestation of paganism, idol worship in our times. Modern Hindus, In the end of the day, they believe in one supreme God, Vishnu. It depends on which group you ask. Some say Brahma, some say Vishnu, some say Krishna. But they all believe, all of them, all of the subgroups of Hinduism believe that all of these other sub-gods, demigods, semi-gods originated from the one Brahma or the one Vishnu or the one Krishna. So even they acknowledge that deep down there is one God who is the God of gods, the supreme God. If you were to take the Merriam-Webster dictionary of definition of monotheism, the reality is that pretty much every religion that you look at on the face of this earth is monotheistic. But that's not the Quranic definition of monotheism. The Quranic definition of monotheism, firstly, unifies God in His being, and secondly, unifies our worship of that God. And this is the profound difference in the Quranic definition and the dictionary definition of monotheism. To believe in one all-perfect, supreme, unified God. Here, some religions might qualify. Some, indeed. Hinduism, okay, they would not qualify because they believe in a plethora of gods. In this definition, that one, supreme, unique, all-powerful God. Some religions might qualify. But then when you get to the other point, and that is, and to unify Him in your acts of devotion and worship. In other words, to worship none save that one God who created you. And this is where the Quranic definition and the dictionary definition of monotheism absolutely collide. Because for the Muslim, to worship the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would make him automatically, ipso facto, a non-Muslim. If a Muslim were to come and to prostrate to our Prophet Muhammad, or he were to say, "Oh Muhammad, forgive me. Oh Muhammad, grant me salvation. Save me, oh Muhammad." If a Muslim were to say that, that act of his would disqualify him from being a Muslim. Why? Because he has contradicted the very crux of Islam, the very gist of Islam, which is the testimony of faith, La ilaha illallah, which I'm sure you have heard many times in the course of today's many lectures. There is no deity that is worthy of our worship other than Allah. This is the crux of our belief. This is the fundamental pillar upon which all other pillars revolve around. If this pillar is not met, even if it is not met by contradicting it via our Prophet Muhammad, it doesn't matter how you contradict it. If you direct an act of worship to other than God, if you pray, you prostrate, you sacrifice, you invoke, you have a relationship with any being that is an exclusive right of God's, then you have contradicted that testimony of faith. There is no object, no being, no substance that is worthy of our worship, our veneration, our love, our fear, our hope, other than the one who created me, including the prophets of God, including the angels. So this is the crux of our religion, and this is why Muslims say, yes, we are the only monotheistic religion, because our definition of monotheism is more than just the dictionary definition of monotheism.
Allah, there's only one God and